Hey guys, it's Linda Winter with another Winter Designs project. So I want to talk about the adult bib. Now this is just really a fabric protector to protect your clothing. So rather than stealing those plastic bibs from all of those lobster restaurants, you can make your own. These are great to make for your husband that's just a slob, or your dad or your brother that's just a slob, or for somebody that's in a nursing home, or for anyone that needs protection from their clothing. That can be a child that is a little bit older, but maybe just is a mess and just needs to have something to keep those clothes clean. So you decide who this is going to be for. What I really hope you'll do is grab some of your old clothes. I'm going to show you a couple samples, your blue jeans, the button-down shirts, those kinds of things, and make a ton of these and take these to anyone you know in a nursing home and then say, here, these are for you to hand out to your friends, because these are the kinds of things that are throw in the washer. You can whip them up really fast, take them out, hang dry, or put them in the dryer. But the idea of protecting clothing for anyone that's in need of this, we want to play with our fabrics so that wearing a bib doesn't have that negative connotation. So choose cute fabrics, choose the practical fabrics, choose fabrics that don't scream bib, because that makes whoever it is that's wearing this feel a little bit more comfortable in it. So let's talk about the style. This is just like any other bib, but it's made larger. I am going to show you how to adjust the template. So if you want to make it for somebody that's a little bit smaller than your average adult, then it works well too. I have a small bib, it's for babies, and in that video that I have, I show you how to take the template, because it has that no slip material on the back. This stuff here, it grabs your fabric. You can adjust the template to make it a little bit wider, a little bit longer, or smaller, even for preemies. So I show how to do that. If I've got my fabric right here and I place this along that fold, you know, imagine me cutting around it. Well, if I want to make it smaller, I'm going to scoot that off of the fold, and I'll show you on the table a little bit, but you can already see right here that this is going to be narrower here. I can cut around. When I get to here, I just scoot that template down and I cut around, and that already makes that bib a little bit smaller. So I mentioned fabric choice, so let's take a look at a couple of the bibs that are here. I'm going to put this around me. I want you all to see how this looks on me. I don't want my microphone to really mess up too much, but I want you to see what this looks like. So when I've got this on, I've got blue jean on one side. This is actually a pair of blue jeans, one leg. There's the side seam there. And on the other side, I have some camo fabric. So this may be something that your brother might rock, you know, deciding, hey, I'm in the military, I want to rock this, or he wanted to go in the military. But the idea of I've got camo that kind of blends in with the shirt, or a blue jean that blends in as well. We'll look at closings, how we attach this, because Velcros are not the only option. My friend Carol made these, and she did a matching set, and they're reversible as well. So we've got fabric here. She did some free motion quilting on this, and I know it's upside down, but you'll still get the idea. And we've got the darker fabric here. What she did on this, I thought it was so great. She took this part of the fabric right here, and she created a nice little applique and an applique. So you can take those fabrics and then do a blanket stitch or a zigzag or a satin stitch or whatever on that. So these two sets, reversible, but it's a set. And again, if you're going to be making these for somebody that you love, making more than one is a nice thing. Pretzel fabric, there are tons of fabrics out there that make us laugh and smile, and anything food related is always fun as well. I mentioned using the materials that you have at home. This is a men's flannel shirt. When I flip it over, you can see there are the buttons. I stitched this down on the front side. I actually left the pocket on. I was hoping I could use the pocket as part of the design, but the pocket was just too high up. The shirt wasn't long enough. So I left the pocket there. Right here, you can even see where the button was. So that right there was where the buttonhole was, and the button that I snipped off on the other side. But that right here is where the pocket was. So you can take those shirts that have stains or that are frayed at the edges or whatever it is and make these out of your old clothing. So blue jeans are great, and then, you know, the men's shirts I think are really terrific for that too. You can choose a different fabric on the back side. So let's talk about options for closure. I mentioned Velcro. I went through my stash of Velcro. I have a ton of white Velcro. I had no black Velcro except for this little thin piece. So I stitched one piece on and I stitched the other piece on. Let me show you. It just doesn't work. Or imagine this being around somebody's neck. It's not going to stay on there at all. So I don't recommend cutting your Velcro in half. Let me show you how Velcro comes. We're talking about the sew-on Velcro. You can see that thickness there. These two are going along the length of where this joins at the neck. So when you stitch those on, this is the front, this is the inside, and you can see how those two catch. And I don't care about the top stitching right there. I would rather have this stitched onto the 2 layers of fabric instead of sewing it onto this and not having those stitches here, because it just wouldn't hold. This fabric would separate. So you're okay with stitching on top of that. So there's Velcro here in one direction. This Velcro is a little bit different. We've got Velcro going this way. It's gone in the opposite direction. If you're making this for somebody that wants to adjust this, you could put one on this way, and on this side, instead of putting it in the same direction, you could have a piece going this way. So when you put this on, and actually this one going longer, much longer, and then you can choose, do I want it further around the neck? Do I want it further away on the neck? So play with your Velcro options there. Here's another one with Velcro, and you can see this Velcro going in the same direction there. I'm going to show you what I did, because I mentioned that I didn't have any black Velcro, and I didn't want to put white Velcro on my blue jeans and camo. So I did the same thing that I do on a lot of my other projects. I take what I've got at home. I have a button here. If you're good at sewing on buttons with your sewing machine, by all means, do the cut, 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 sew, and turn and press, and then top stitch, and then sew the button on, sew the button on, sew the button on, one from one bib to another to another. I've used these hair elastics, and I used a hair elastic this width here, this thickness, this diameter, rather than these. They make these guys here. Let me pull over the whole bag so you can see the whole bundle. So they make these here, they make these here. These thicker ones, I love the idea of this, but this inside of here, when you're going to sew that on, your sewing machine is going to get bogged down by all of that, and it may not even stitch inside of there. Placing this on, you're going to just basically cut off that metal piece. You can see I've cut one end already and cut off that metal piece completely, and then that would go inside here. So you can adjust that too. If you wanted to do 2 smaller buttons, a button here, a button here, it's totally up to you. So you'd have your elastic here and your elastic here. I do that on my coffee cozies. You've got to decide, who is this for? Are they going to be fighting with this bib around their neck, trying to get it off? If it's someone that really doesn't understand they're wearing a bib and why they need to have that bib on, then having the Velcro and making sure that you've got really good Velcro on there and good placement. Or you could do this, tie a knot in that, and when that goes on there, if you tie a knot in that, see how this right now is fairly, let me get that around the button. See how that's fairly loose? If you tied a knot in this and then put that on top, let's do that real fast. And I do this for my coffee cozies because it really allows you to do for a bigger or smaller. So I really want to have a little bit longer. I cut this one a little bit short just to have, but imagine that I took my tweezers and I pulled this through. When I did that, it would have that knot. Do I have tweezers nearby? No. Anyway, you get the idea. Tie a knot in there so that can be adjusted. Again, is somebody that's wearing this bib going to be fighting you on this bib, trying to get it off constantly? Or are they aware and they can put it on themselves and take it on themselves? Totally up to you as to how you want to do this. So let's talk Velcro itself. I like Velcro. I like those elastics with the buttons. Do not use peel off Velcro. You can see this, and it's hook and loop rather than Velcro. But I've got the rough side, I've got the soft side. I want to have those 2 pieces. I need those 2 pieces, but I do not want the peel off. Why? It's going to stick and it's going to come right off. It may not come off that easily, but sooner or later it's going to come off when you want it to stay around their neck. So you're going to use this, and you'll use this to sew on, and I'll use this when I make the one that we're doing today. All right, so you've got buttons as an option, you've got Velcro as an option. It's up to you. All right, so let's talk fabric choices again. We talked about clothing. I really want you to play with your clothes in the closet, the things that you would be throwing away, that you would be donating, and pull those out. The blue jeans, the men's flannel shirts, all those kinds of things, because those would work really well. But also go through your stash. You can see here, you know, if it is somebody that says, I don't want to wear an adult bib, seriously, but but they make a mess, and it would make your life a whole lot easier. Then you've got fun fabrics. This is all, you know, kind of those signs from the diners and all those different places, and it's just so cute. And somebody that remembers when hamburgers with a French fry or with French fries are 55 cents. When did that ever exist? Way back in the day. So those kinds of fabrics. Somebody that considers themselves hot stuff, or they like chili, or they like hot stuff, there are a ton of fabrics that are food related fabrics, French fries and all kinds of things. If you're making this for somebody that just needs to wear one because they're painting, they're making a mess, it's kind of like an apron. So if it's somebody that's a sewer, a crafter, Tula Pinks fabric, I love this. This would be the front. This is a home deck fabric. I love the idea of a home deck fabric for the back side. That way I don't have to put any lining in there. We'll talk lining in just a minute, because the whole idea is to protect your clothing. I pulled this white fabric because I love the idea of this. But look, you can see the mat underneath. You can see my hand underneath. The idea is it's just too lightweight. If I use this, I'm going to have to use some kind of a batting, some kind of something. When you're adding something to it, now you've got one more thing that adds bulk, one more thing that you have to add, one more thing that doesn't lay nicely on their chest. And again, if it's an adult, they may not want to feel like, oh, this is a bib, a traditional bib. So if you can use a home deck fabric or blue jeans or something like that, the idea is when you've got this on, we want to prevent the clothing that they're wearing to be covered with food. So home deck, blue jeans, those are both great. I pulled a few fabrics that I think for men that are like, I do not want to wear, oh, well, I might rock that. You know, if it's got something kind of cool or hip or whatever. And again, if it's for that boy that really is a mess, or that just really needs to wear it, then grab his favorite whatever character that he loves. This is a heavier weight fabric, so this would work really well on the front, and you could do a solid on the black. On the back side, it's really up to you. I want to talk about materials that I think really come in handy, but you have to, again, be aware. PUL, Polyurethane Laminate. This has this sheen to it. This side here is more dull. PUL, I talk about in a lot of the videos and in a lot of my classes. PUL, this back side, it's like vinyl, it's like the laminated fabric, it's like oilcloth, but this is wipeable, washable, breathable. If you've got clothing, a bib, that has cotton on the front and a laminated fabric on the back side, and it's gotten dirty and it's got food in it and it sat there over the weekend, it stayed in the trunk, you went to, you know, a crawfish festival and it got crawfish juice on there and it stayed in the trunk, and you're here in Florida and that trunk got to 115 degrees, that stuff is going to start growing on that laminated fabric, that inside of the laminated fabric. PUL, Polyurethane Laminate, wipeable, washable, breathable. This stuff doesn't have a tendency to have all those things start turning into that mess. So you can throw this in the washer and dryer, but this was made for diapers. This was made for babies. This was made to be really food safe and, you know, diaper kind of stuff, you know, all of that stuff that you don't want growing anywhere. PUL was made for that. So Polyurethane Laminate, PUL. You can get this at your local stores. They do have different colors, different styles. They tend to be more kid-ish with their patterns. So if you are going for something, you might want to get a solid that you could put on the back side. So this would be the back. This would be the inside. Now, when you're cutting with something like this, I don't have enough material for me to do this, but I want you to see when I lay this out, if I'm cutting with this, can you see how that is slipping? I do not want to cut around and think what I cut here will be the same on the back, because it's not. You can see how that moved on its own. So when you're cutting with PUL, or you're cutting with any material that has a slip to it, what you want to do is put the non-slippery side to the non-slippery side. You still have to be really careful. Let's pretend I've got this lined up. But do you see how that is the same? Those two are the same when I move this around. So when you're working with something like PUL, you want to make sure the non-slippery side, this is shiny, this is not, the non-slippery, the non-shiny side goes to the non-shiny side. So PUL is a really good option if this adult bib is really going to be tested, if they're really going to be using this and taking advantage of this. Okay, so we'll look at our fabrics that we're going to cut in a minute, but I wanted to pull over a pant leg. This was a pant leg, and you can see the seam right down here on the side. When I use something like that, I'm going to be placing my template along that edge. So when I place this along here, you can see I don't have enough fabric that way. Let's flip this over. And how you place that template will make all the difference as to whether you have enough fabric or not. So you can see right here, see how I've got that length here. So we're going to put this fold, and the template doesn't actually say anything. They cut all my templates before I got to say Winter Designs Adult Bib Place on Fold. So you may want to take a metallic marker and write fold just as a reminder to yourself. All right, so we want to have our folds lined up. I'm not going to cut the blue jean, but I want to talk about how you can adjust this for the size to make it bigger or smaller. I'm looking over here to place this fold on the fold. And I'm going to scoot this up because this bulk right here, this is the hem. I don't want to cut through that hem. It's got way too much oomph from my rotary cutter to go through. So if I were to cut this around, this right here, the way I've got it set up, is the perfect layout for me to do a regular adult bib. But if this is for an adolescent, I want to make it narrower and I want to make it a little bit shorter. So right here, I'm going to line my fabric up on my mat. And this is a great thing to do for any of the templates that we have, pretty much. Not all, but pretty much. All right, so I'm lining that up on the fold. I'm going to scoot this over 1/2 inch. I'm going to use the template and our mat. That mat, there's a blue line right there. When I place that on, I've now made this 1 inch narrower. You can go further. If I go over 1 inch to that, now I've made this 2 inches narrower. So from my left of the chest to the right of the chest, it's going to be 2 inches narrower. I'm going to bring this back, and I want to do that 1/2 inch on my mat, which is going to give me 2 inches. Make sure you haven't moved your fabric, and I'm looking on my fabric. And as I go to cut that, I would start down here, and I would cut to about here. And I want to make it not only narrower, but I want to make it shorter. So I want this all the way up to be shorter, so I'm going to bring this down a little bit. And when I bring this down a little bit and I continue to cut, if I stopped right here, now when I cut, I've just made that shorter as well. Watch my baby bib template for you to see how to adjust that, but you get the idea. What that allows you to do is take those blue jeans, well, this is a leg, and that gives you that seam right down the middle. And it's a great way for you to make these practical, but fast and easy, so you can whip these up. Again, my hope is that you will make a bunch of these and give them away. All right, my fold is over here. When I look at this, this does not work because this is where my fold is, so I need to turn my fabric. All right, we're going to make this bib with this fabric here. So if you've got a teenage girl that is at home with you and you are doing homeschooling, or she's in a special center and you want to give her some bibs that she can wear, choose some fun fabrics, or better yet, let her choose those fabrics too. I'm going to place this along the edge where that fold is. And I'm looking here. I don't care so much yet about that. I'm placing this along the edge. Now I look to see, this is lined up with this basically. So as long as I'm lined up here, I'm good. I'm going to turn my template in a way that I can get to my rotary cutter easily. I'm going to cut from my shoulder. So my shoulder, and I'm looking to see that that's lined up again. My shoulder is where I'm going to cut. I don't want to cut in the middle of my body because we want our blade to go as straight as possible. When we get to the curve at the neck, we're going to talk something different. So I'm going to cut. Just give it a cut. I'm going to turn that template, and what I want to do is cut off. Now, if I had more fabric here and I wanted to save it, I could actually turn the template as I go. A lot of times in my videos, I talk about 2 ways to cut. Cut off or cut around. When I cut here, I'm just going to move this template because again, I'm cutting from my shoulder. And notice how I move that fabric just to make sure I'm cutting through. We can normally cut, when we have straight edges of our templates, we can cut up to 10 layers of fabric. I typically like to do 8, but we don't have that because of this curve here. So we have 2 pieces of fabric, although it's 1 piece here, I have 2 layers of fabric. So I would recommend, if you are going to cut multiples, that you can do 2 pieces here, which would give you 4 here as the max. When I get right to here, I'm going to move the template again just a little bit closer to me, and then I cut that off. We're going to move the template so I have it in control, and I cut to here. Now, this is where we want to take our time, and we're going to cut a little bit, move the template, reposition the rotary cutter, just so we're going to have success. So I'm cutting to here. I'm turning that angle. You can see how I'm pulling that back. I'm turning that rotary cutter at an angle. And I stopped here, so I'm going to cut a little bit right here is where it gets tricky. My blade is really turned at an angle, so I need to reposition the template and that rotary cutter. And if you don't cut it all, it's okay, because that's where you're going to grab a pair of scissors or a pen or a pencil or something like that. What I want you to think about right here is, as I'm turning this, I do not want to do what I'm doing there. I don't know if y'all can see, but I'm hitting hard. I do not want to hit hard into that, because I could actually cut off, if I pushed hard enough, a little bit of the black template. What I want to do instead is change the angle of the template. When I change the angle, that allows me to cut. If I have any little stray hairs there, I'm okay with that, because they're all going to come out in the seam allowance. And you can see right there, I've got a few stragglers. That's part of the seam allowance. So we would do that twice. We would do that for both the front and the back. Now you can make this reversible totally if you want to. I'm just using 2 pieces of cotton. Now you've got to decide, is this for a really practical kind of a use where I really need protection, or is this just something that I want, you know, my husband to wear, not this one, or my friend to wear because she's always whatever, if it's, you know, happy 50th birthday, whatever it is. But if it's somebody that we really want to have use of, then this is where I may want to get a thin layer of cotton batting. I don't have any batting here, but imagine that I cut another one out. I've got my front, I've got my back. Imagine I've got this here. This would have been cut, and I would pin all the way around, and that now gives me an inner lining. If you are going to be making those for really, you know, heavy duty use, that's when I would put this on. Imagine that I've already cut this out, and this side, that shiny side, not this way, because that shiny, actually this way is the way. Yes, I was looking at this. This is going to be on the front, that shiny side, and this is where I would want to have that. You could have it as an inner lining, or you can get rid of this completely and have that as the backing. So you can use this both as a lining, and you can use it both as a backing. So you've got those options. Okay, clip, 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 pin, 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 whichever way you want to go. And when we get to the sewing machine, we're going to stitch all the way around here, all the way here, all the way here, except, so where do we put our turn? You've got a couple different options. This fabric is pretty basic, so it's no big deal. If I had my blue jeans where I had a whole bunch of bulk, I had my seam going down the middle with those buttons, then I definitely don't want to have the opening here. I don't like having the opening here anyway. If I'm going to have an opening, I'm going to put it on one of the sides, or you can put it up here. If you put it up here, then this is going to be a little bit of a pain for you to turn, but there's also less for you to have to worry about lining up and making pretty. And if you are going to be doing the button and the elastic, then you have that opening already ready to go for that elastic. All right, so I'm going to grab some of my clips. We're going to clip this at the sewing machine, and we'll start stitching this up. So for a project like this, I really like straight pins rather than clips. I can just get a little bit more control with the straight pins than the clips, but I've got clips here today. The other thing, I really like doing this at my cutting table rather than my sewing table, because I'm going to lay all of this out to make sure that all these areas where there's a bend here, a bend there, they all get in the right position. You can do this without clips completely and just start stitching, and as you go, kind of check every now and then to make sure that your back is lining up with the front. It's up to you. As far as the seam allowance goes, you can do 1/4 inch. Whatever you do, be consistent. So if you're doing 3/8, I say be consistent, but it is an adult bib, so it's not like this is going to be, you know, something that's going to be hanging on the wall. So try your consistency as much as you can. I love projects like this. I find sewing projects like this to be a little more forgiving. If I'm off a little bit, I'm off a little bit. It's okay. When you go to turn and you do your top stitching, it's really not going to make that much difference. Kind of the saying, it all comes out in the wash. It kind of does. All right, so I'm going to add a clip over here. Now, what I want to do is start where I'm going to leave my opening. So this is the top right here. This is my neck. I'm going to have this side as my opening. So I want to go ahead and do a little bit of back stitching here. I'm not going to leave but maybe 3 inches of my opening. So back stitching and back stitching where I start and stop. So I'm going to start sewing where I would have stopped. Now, if you have a foot that allows you to line up that seam allowance and use the foot as the edge, by all means, take advantage of that. I love a foot with a good edge on it, so if you've got one of those and you can move your needle position, then definitely do that. I'm going to go ahead and just take my time. Now, when I get to the top here, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that clip, and I'm going to stitch off. And if your fabric has moved a little bit like mine has, you can line that up just a bit. And we'll back stitch there. And I'm going to lift up the presser foot, reposition that needle on the next side. And again, I'm going to use my foot kind of as my guide. This foot doesn't have a ledge sticking out like I really like. Back stitch here. And again, I'm learning this machine, so it doesn't always back stitch when I say back stitch. Notice too, those clips, I know they're making a lot of noise for the video. So you guys that have the clips, I know you love those clips too. Aren't they amazing? All right, so there we go. My back stitch, I think I've just got to push this button harder. So we're going to go ahead and coming around to the neck. Now, you've got 2 options when it comes to these curves. You can clip, 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 and we'll do that afterwards, or you can use pinking shears. And I love the idea of pinking shears. So we're at the inside neck. And again, if you weren't using clips, this is where you would adjust your fabric to make sure everything was lined up. Another reason why clips versus pins here, the pins, they're just kind of laying on top and not kind of, you know, just maybe catching on your machine too, on your table. So if you've got straight pins or clips, the smaller clips are good, the pins are good. You use whatever it is that you have. And when I get to this, again, if I were adding the buttons, adding the elastic, I'd want to make sure that I left that opening open. I'm just going to go ahead and close this because we're going to do Velcro on here. If we were adding the elastic, I'd take a couple stitches right about their back stitch and then stick that elastic inside my 2 layers of fabric, stitch over it several times so that I made sure that it was in there. And then continue to back stitch over that as well. We're on our second side. And by the way, sewing machines are wonderful, but if you have a serger, this is an amazing serger project. All right, we're coming around to where we started. So when I get back to my beginning, about 3 inches before, I started here, so I'm going to continue to sew a little bit further, but about 3 inches before I'm going to stop. Right about there and back stitch, really good. All right, we'll cut those threads. All right, so I mentioned this is a great serger project. Why? Because this that I'm doing right now, the snip, 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 I wouldn't need to do. So the serger allows you to just zip through, and it gives you those nice clean finished edges. The pinking shear, if you've got pinking shears, that's a really great thing for you to use as well. It's kind of what is comfortable for you. If you're making a bunch of these adult bibs, then you can sit down in front of TV with those pinking shears and just cut all around your project. We definitely want to do the neck, and it may be something that you want to at those bottom curves snip too, but the neck is going to be the most important. So I know you guys have done this before. I'm angling this for me to see rather than for you to see, just because I want to get on to the finishing of this project. Okay, so we're going to go to our opening. We're going to start to turn, and I want to really grab first, get them out of the way, those around the neck pieces. So I'm kind of bunching that fabric up, and I want to get to where I can get those turned around. And notice what I'm doing with both hands. I'm poking the corners of that combination of the neck area. The reason why is I can kind of, with both hands working in unison, get those started with the turning, and then I'm going to pull. While I'm still here, I want to grab whatever tool it is that you have. And I mentioned Phillips stiletto in several of my videos. I love this stiletto that Philip has made for me. It's a wooden stiletto. Let me get in there. Philip made me some wooden stilettos, and I love those wooden stilettos because they really let me get right into the corner, but I don't have to worry about poking anything out. All right, so we're going to poke here. Use a chopstick, use whatever it is that you have. It also, the one that Philip made me, has a really nice flat edge. All right, so we've done one there. We've gotten those pretty good. We're going to keep pulling. I want to reach in, and I'm going to go grab. Here's my second neck area, this guy right here. So I'm going to reach in and grab. And again, I want to poke those corners, get them nice and pushed out as much as I can with my fingers first. You all have heard the expression like paint drying, watching paint dry. That's kind of what I think when people watch me or anyone else turning something. Like, really, we've got to see you do that whole thing? But the idea of turning, and then the most important, pressing. I'm not going to take the time to press well, but what I am going to do is kind of press my fingers in around those seams. What am I doing this for? I want to make sure that those seams all got caught, but also just to help open them up just a little bit. This is the one that I need to poke here. We're going to go all the way up. And if you had a layer of batting in here, inside of here, or if you were using PUL, you'd want to be a little more careful when you're poking all of this so you don't rip the batting, you don't snag anything. I'm going to go over to the other corner again and just make sure those are poked out. And top stitching is that one thing that really gives a nice finish. So of course we'd want to top stitch. All right, so I'm not going to take the time to press all of this. What I want to do is show you how we're going to do the straps and how we would close it, and then we'll go back and look at some of the others. All right, so press and pull and press and pull, finagle your fabric. You all know exactly what I mean. We're just kind of making sure that this seam here is really open. Okay, you can see here how it's not. I don't want to top stitch on that when it's not completely closed. What that gives me is one side with a little bit more of a curve than the other side, and it defeats the whole purpose of the template. The template makes the left side and the right side exactly the same. The top and the bottom curving at the same place that it should. Look at the difference between here. Can you see how this is kind of, you know, not laying nicely versus here? What we're going to do with this is pull. When you pull, that tends to flatten that out, so I don't have to spend as much time tucking. I do want to tuck that in and get that pressed, so when I do sew that top stitch, it's going to be closing there. I would start sewing right here where that opening is and go all the way down. All right, so I decided to go ahead and press, and I want to show you the top stitching. So this is our opening here, and we're going to add the Velcro after that, but we want to start the top stitching right before our opening starts. Now, if you have an edge foot where you can set your foot along that edge, this is the time to use it. So again, this foot that I have on here doesn't have that nice edge for me to follow. So I am going to move the needle over to the edge. That way I can at least follow the edge of the foot a little bit. We want to get right along. This is our edge stitching, whatever you want to call it, top stitching. We just want to go right along that edge. I think it gives you a nicer finish. Matching your thread also makes a difference. Pressing is huge. Just take your time with this and use what foot you're comfortable with, because the foot will make a difference. I do like a longer stitch length too. I didn't adjust my stitch length, but to me a 3/0 gives a nicer top stitch look, even a 3.5. And if you're fairly good and confident, then a heavier weight thread also really does a nice job. I'm sewing on a machine that is not mine. And for any of you that have sewn in a class on a machine that's not yours, you probably know it's not the most comfortable thing. So take your time at home to get everything set up the way you like. Now when I get to here, I'm going to leave my needle in that right position so I can lift up rather than stitching off. We're going to be adding our Velcro after we finish up here, but I don't want to go off of the fabric here. If you can do kind of the nice amount of seam allowance all the way around, that helps some. And we are and same thing when we get here. We're going to go ahead and put that needle in the right position so we can turn and pivot. And if you went too far, you can go back a little bit with the back tack. I don't really need to do a whole lot of back tacking here. This is just a top stitching, but when we get to the opening that we left, we will just stitch over those stitches just to ensure that that's closed. All right, there we go. We'll cut our threads here, and then let's talk Velcro. All right, so I've got my Velcro here. So it really doesn't matter whether you do the rough side or the soft side in one position versus the other, although I do like the rough side on the side that's not ever going to touch their neck. And I do want to shorten this up just a little bit. I probably really stick these two back together when I cut those off, but I'm going to go ahead and just put that side by side. And you can see I cut it at an angle too, so I want to make sure to go cut this straight. All right, so we're going to do the rough side here. You can pin this if you want. I'm not going to. I'm just going to stitch around. Let me get this a little bit further down. And again, you decide if you're going to make this so that this Velcro is going to be allowing for more movement. So if you want them to be able to wear it a little bit tighter or a little bit looser. I'm going to go close to the edge, but not off. I'll probably go one more stitch here. And this process that I'm doing right now, I'd probably go around and do this a couple times to make sure this doesn't come off at all. This is going to be in the washer and dryer who knows how many times. So you could go around just like you did, or you can go down and do an X, like I just did, from one corner to the next. And we're going to stitch that back over. And I'm going to go down that other corner. And I'll show you on the back side what this looks like. And then we want to back tack that as well, because we don't want those stitches popping out. All right, so you can see, I've got a bunch of threads that are in there too, but you can see I went around and then I did an X right in the middle. On the front side, not so much is showing because of the Velcro itself. So we would do that on one side and we would do that on the other side. So on the other side, we have a decision. So do we want this Velcro here like this, or do we want to put the Velcro here? If we put the Velcro here like that, then what that allows is somebody to make it tighter or looser. So it's up to you. If we have it right here, they can go from where it just barely overlaps to a little bit further. So that's what I'm going to do. And I think because this Velcro is so slippery, I probably would pin this Velcro. And I probably would also go right along the edge. I am probably 1/8 of an inch from the edge. So I'd probably go right along that edge too, so this Velcro doesn't pop back and get loose. I want to make sure that it's on there really nice and tight. So I'll probably go around the edge again and get closer to that edge. But after we've done that, we're pretty much done with this. And again, what I would love for you guys to do is think about making from some of your old clothing a bunch of these, and think about who would really appreciate these. Do you have a nursing home down the street? Do you have a relative that's in a home? Do you have somebody that just really likes to go out to a lot of restaurants and eat a lot of seafood, and it's a good laugh, and he's always making a mess, and he would have a whole lot of fun with something like this? You know, the idea is make these in bulk and give them away. Or if you are selling things, this is another great thing to add to your stitching for the kitchen projects. Okay. So we've got that done. I would cut all those threads off, but you can see I can put it here, or I can put it further here. So you can see that overlap. So see how much Velcro I've got there, and it still holds enough so that it's still strong. All right, I'm going to head back over to the table. And let's look at this nice adult bib, teenage bib. I'm going to throw this on. And do you see here how busy this is with everything I have on? So if somebody's wearing something like that, you may end up wanting to do this. And then it's not quite so all in your face. If you can match for coordinating outfits, even better. Totally up to you. Again, what is the purpose of this bib? Why are we making these? Do they need them? Is this something that would be really practical? Is this something that's really necessary? So you make the decision about when you think you'll know your needs for something like this, and decide what kinds of projects, what kind of fabric, what kind of materials you have on the back side would work, and then how you want to do your closures. This is the adult bib. It can be adjustable. You can find it at winterdesigns.com. Thanks guys for watching. Have a great time making these.